Hello, I'm Kerry Leese and this is Destination Vlog. Thank you very much for joining me. Today, I'm going to be doing something a little bit different because I decided to do a book review. I was given this book, 59 Seconds, Think a Little, Change a Lot, by a friend who I used to work with at the police when I left a couple of weeks ago. Now, I think it was a brilliant present. I'm all for getting presents that remind the person of you as the giver, or vice versa. Now, I think this was really good because the environment that we used to work in was very free thinking. There was a lot of discussion encouraged in order to get to more creative, sort of out of the box solutions. The friend that it came from was very supportive and a real sort of thinker, really great with creating ideas, and he came up with a lot of suggestions that sort of helped to induce creativity when it came to the business. It was really supportive in my decision to actually leave my job and start doing this full time. Now, I think it was such a great suggestion because, not a suggestion even, it wasn't a suggestion, he didn't suggest it, he got me the book, because it is based on self-help but looking at a scientific approach to self-help. So, it is written by Professor Richard Wiseman, who is the UK's only professor in public understanding of psychology. I think that's quite interesting. How cool to be the only person in the country that does your job. Pretty cool, I think. He has a lot of quirky ideas about psychology and the various aspects of psychology, so things to do with illusion and perception. This is the first book that I read of his, and it takes the form of a 10-chapter book that looks at a different aspect of psychology, really. So looking at motivation, looking at persuasion, happiness, creativity, parenting, attraction, relationships, all sorts really. So if you want to improve yourself, maybe your working relationships, your personal relationships, I would recommend this book. So I've said that it looks a bit more of a scientific approach. How to do that? Well, each chapter introduces the topic. So stress, for example, it looks at the impact and the effects of stress very briefly, and it talks about studies into stress levels, maybe ways to reduce stress and relieve stress. It will look at a scientific study or piece of research, and it will discuss it, and it will discuss the results. So from the findings, was such and such myth about stress, was that correct? And as such, were self-help remedies correct? And advice that's been given for generations. Now, not only does he give really simple explanations for the scientific reason and the physiological reason as to how your brain works in a certain way, but he also gives you hints and tips of how to actually improve. So he's not only saying, yeah, this was wrong and you've been doing this wrong for years, but he then says, well, actually, given this piece of research, why don't you try this to try and improve your life and reduce your stress levels, for example. So I found that really useful. Another way that he uses to hit home the concept is that at the end of each chapter, there is the 59-second kind of summary. So it's looking at the main information, the main points that's covered in that chapter. The book Richard Wiseman mentions is it's kind of inspired by a friend he met for lunch with, and this friend said to him, you know, yeah, self-help is all good, but I want something with a scientific approach, but that isn't going to take me 20 years because I want to see results fast, which I think is mirrored in today's society, isn't it? None of us have got time for anything really, but that doesn't mean that we don't want to improve. So he went about writing this book that was kind of quite snappy, quite concise advice on how you improve yourself. Now, not only do you get the nice little summary at the end of the chapter, you also get summaries at the end of the book. The 10 most interesting and important sort of bits of advice when giving somebody ways to help themselves in under a minute. I think you're pushing it under a minute, but they're really practical tips. Now, I have got a lot of things that I want to add to my daily sort of administration list, so my to-do list, because now that I'm self-employed, I need to make sure that I'm motivated. And if you listen, yeah, not a lot's going on. It's just me in my house for the time being before the smelly boy gets home. So I need to keep myself motivated, and my way of doing that is through lists, which Professor Wiseman agrees with. Oh yeah, check it out. So, because there's so much advice in this book, there are lots of things that I want to add into my daily routine to try and help myself be more effective and happier and more motivated and all of the rest of it. So, I found the motivation chapter 3 I think it is, the most sort of thumbed, shall we say. I've got loads of sort of dog-eared corners where I've creased the corner over because there's lots of information and tips that I want to put into my daily life. But it might be that you've read the book and you find something else particularly useful. To be honest, the whole book I think is brilliant. Even though I don't have children, I'm going to be using things from the parenting section because it's looking at obviously how people interact with children, and we all do that on, you know, a regular basis, I would say. So my recommendation for this book, in a way of rating, 5 stars. I found it brilliant, really useful, really interesting, but also very easy to understand. It's not like other self-help books where I've been sitting there reading over the same page 12 times, getting all confused because I really haven't got a clue what this person's talking about. You either need a degree in psychology or mind reading to understand what some of these people are talking about. But Professor Wiseman, really good at being able to engage with his audience. So that's why I've given this book 5 stars. Very, very useful. I believe that the book is £8.99. I think it's definitely worth it. So a little gift to yourself, whether you're looking to improve your daily life, your personal life, professional life, or whether you're just interested in psychology about what goes on in there. I would recommend this book, and I'm going to finish with a little bit of an excerpt from the book, just to give you a little snippet. This was one bit that I found particularly useful. It used an analogy that just kind of stuck with me, stuck in my mind and kind of helped me. It's in the creativity section of the book, and it mentions when you're maybe faced with a creative problem and you're not sure how to get the best solution out of it, he suggests looking at it as if you have 2 men. See what you think. One of them is highly creative but very shy. The other is clever, not as creative, and far more domineering. Now imagine going into the room with the 2 men and asking them to come up with ideas for a campaign to advertise a new type of chocolate bar. True to form, the loud but not especially creative man dominates the conversation. He does not allow his quieter counterpart to contribute, and the ideas produced are good but not very innovative. Now imagine a slightly different scenario. Again, you walk into the room and ask for campaign ideas. However, this time you distract the loud man by getting him to watch a film. Under these circumstances, the quiet man is able to make his voice heard, and you walk away with a completely different and far more creative set of ideas. In many ways, this is a good analogy for the relationship between your mind and creativity. The quiet guy represents your unconscious mind. It is capable of wonderful ideas, but is often more difficult to hear. The loud guy represents your conscious mind. Clever, not as innovative, but difficult to get out of your head. So there you go. That's a little bit from the creativity section of 59 Seconds. Think a Little, Change a Lot by Professor Richard Wiseman. Let me know what you think. I hope you enjoy and have a really good evening.